So everybody, it's King here. Hope you guys having a great day. Welcome to New Form Technically. Come back in the case of content. Two, as you see by the title and on the screen, in the Incredibles Power Scaling Tier List or ranking all the Incredibles universe from weakest to strongest. Now, with that being said, audio should be better and audio and demonstration of some things should be better as well. I'm hoping with some different things to not only clear my points and as well, make obviously this tier list be the most concise, defined, concrete, reasonable thing. It's the best thing. I am a fan of obviously the Incredibles movies, but as well, the verse and greater deal of lore is being said. I've taken a great deal of time, I feel like, to not only unravel everything that makes the Incredible verse what it is. We obviously have a solid, feel like, tier list here, not only to demonstrate every case of power that comes with these different people, lore, stuff like that. Shouldn't be too long of a tier list. We're getting straight to the point. And obviously, the Incredibles had a resurge with not only hype because of the Incredibles hidden to most people, but was always there. NSA files, aka the case of the National Security Addressment files, or in this case, being a different account of pretty much national government talk files. So when it comes down to the case of, all the different greater deal lore is going to be tied to that. I want to go ahead and thank not only, a YouTuber in question, with this being Cartoonishy, that is going to be shown here, right, in different form, within obviously his video that gives not only a great deal of lore insight that I'm going to be taking from, obviously from his overview, the case of the actual incredible files, but as well, I'm going to obviously be taking in a great deal of some different, overview of obviously the case of these people, because I feel like he does a great not only analysis, he's funny, he's cool, and yeah, simple point as that. But there is also, obviously this channel with 4K HDR media that obviously has, the iconic scene where Kronos unveiled, right? But yeah, besides all that yap, hope you guys will enjoy. If you're new here, please do a like, share, subscribe, comment, where the case may be. Let's go and get it in. So we're starting off with Tradewin, who's obviously never shown. Says he has elemental control, just looking at his name, possibly wind control, right? With the tiers, we have obviously no scaling, question mark slash unknown. That is the case for Tradewin. Low hero slash villain, pro hero, elite hero slash first grade Omni droids, Glory Days threats, D1 killer, then GOAT, GOAT, aka greatest of all time. Next we have Gamma Jack, but old, and this is where I'm going to get into greater, dissociation. So obviously there's Glory Day heroes here, but some of these picks are all supposed to demonstrate obviously them when they're older, because when a lot of them, to almost all, the mix depending on the case, if you perceive some of these people not actually dying by actually accidents, and those were cover-ups because they died by Syndrome and his Omni droids, as we do actually have like a direct case list and as well threat rating scale for all different cases, these different heroes that will also be in compoundment with obviously the end all decision for where they scale and as well stand on the tier list. But some of these people obviously are unknown, or their death and how it happened and how they stood is unknown. We do know some people that are able to defeat, some of these different, Omni droids and put them down and do what they do. But someone like Gamma Jack, who I have obviously the artist, representation of how he died, as a lot of these people, we do not actually know exactly how they died, even know with what these Omni droids were built for, how they were trying to go about taking out someone like Mr. Incredible, Mr. Incredible family, and how they could stood to, Syndrome with being, used against him, that would then reckon and replicate reasonable record for not only the type of ways that they could have killed these people, and iconically in artistic representation, Gamma Jack died by getting skewered by the case of the Omni Droid 6 after he defeated the Omni Droid 5 and everything that he could possibly throw at him, regardless of how destructive his gamma radiation is. As yes, he was a pillar of power back in the day and probably was easily a top 6, top 5 most strongest hero of the glory days. The man still was put down, and this is hypothetically him while older, but being disfigured, crushed, all that shit. A terrible fate. But I would say for right now, I'm going to put him in pro hero, right? This is again his older version, right? And makes it different. Omni droids are going to be here in lower form, but yeah, there you go. Gazer Beam, obviously dead, but this is him in consideration of obviously, being older, and so I'll put him here. Gazer Beam was easily, pushing the top 6 to top 5, just like this man, Gamma Jack. So reasonable to be put there. And this man did defeat an Omni Droid himself, right? And we do actually have, the order of them in comparison. You take a minute to look at this, but the multi different names with obviously, the models in mind are there, right? So that is a thing to be had. The V4 was taken out by Gazer Beam, obviously. And then after that, took all these different people, was a Gamma Jack, then proceeding onwards. And then a 7, 8, and mix 9, right? Obviously, 9 different full-fledged use until obviously 9 try to go and kill Mr. Incredible. Mr. Incredible was lucky to be able to get his back snapped back into place and use his superior agility to get around, blah, 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 all that stuff. But yeah, back to this, right? You have this man, freaking Hypershock, who's able to cause an earthquake on the grade 6 Richter scale, which means he could destroy entire fucking communities, cities, cause mountain level possible ray of devastation. The dude literally was Omega Beast Earthbender possibly. So yeah, this being in his prime, right? It makes back say, right, would be higher, but this is just supposed to be a demonstration of him out of prime. Obviously, I have him in his glory days, right? So I would say because of that, again, he's pretty much up there. I would say because obviously Gazer Beam was, after him in a matter of further destroying, different people in comparison to make back say. That is reasonable there, but again, obviously with the proof checking in play, obviously, right? With the case for the V3 killing downburst, Hypershock killed the V3, aka destroyed the V3 with most likely his Madam Opens power, but it was killed by it, and obviously Gazer Beam destroyed the V4 with possibly a high photon, laser beam from his eyes. So I would say this is reasonable, just chain, basically like scale there. Then you have Universal Man as prime. Now, obviously, the case of the encounters and different shit is very much in theory, but by different mixed claim and kind of mixed to say you have a two-sided coin of like this man Universal Man either was very much suicidal and down bad because he didn't have anything besides being a superhero. Universal Man is just Universal Man. There's no greater man besides that. But there's also a level of the fact that he was snuck up on. So potentially, even though he did die by the first one, he was very much a crazy, very rack of all trades and very much, possibly contestable hero because not only is his powers very crazy, but just, and, respect to the fact that obviously this guy was something not to be played around with. Universal Man has, with his delivery of, powers and their showcase there, and of course, and has coming to play here. That's the first time for this ever being the case. I'm not gonna lie. This episode, I might want to go ahead and restart this whole thing, but I'm not about to do that.
Life! Leonardo DiCaprio, one battle after another. Rated R.
I'm not about to see that movie. And of course it keeps going. No, we're not about to sit for that. Listen, all you gotta know is that his powers allowed him not only to reshape his body, lower his density, be invulnerable, be intangible, even mix back cloak. It's very crazy and had a lot of radically weird, trippy powers, but by all reasonable record, even though he was having a chance to be powerful, he did get caught lacking and or had every counter put in play to push past his powers. And you could just tap, 1 second of this dude, and this dude most likely would die. Because you have to understand, even though these people have the proclaim of having greater A power capability, there's a mixed level argument that for a great deal of them, they just have baseline human durability. They're not the general casual standing of like, okay, Newton's third law, what you dish out, you must be able to receive. So there's a level of like, even though Universal Man have very wacky hacks powers, one hit from an Omni Droid, especially the first model, again the V.X1, he most likely died, instantaneously. But you could also just credit this as being a guy that, doesn't really have any true concrete means of scaling. But I would say in his glory days, he easily could be here. I'll give him that because, I fuck with Universal Man's not only design, but in as well concept, even though I don't understand the whole spike head fin thing, but we're not about to get into that. Then we have Meta Man. Old even then is easily reasonable to be in the top 5. Now, he has a credit of just dying by his cape cracking his neck, but as well possible cover up with dying from different cases of mixed bots. But I would say Meta Man, just looking at his powers, is very much reasonable to say to be way higher than these dudes in most different forms. So I will actually argue is because Meta Man did in different like time stance, like in the case of like chronologicalness, die after all these people. So I would give him that, but you could also put him in, unknown slash question marks with no scaling. But I think it's very much reasonable to say that this man is at least there for right now. Then this is downburst in the case of his old age. And downburst's capabilities were nothing to really big scoff at, and there's nothing really greater to big say. And downburst only, correct me if I'm wrong, took out the case of the V2, which is very much a these incredible feat for what he had. But the V2 really only took out, one off whatever low people, and I do think he was of the lower stand of a person. Don't get it twisted, right? Like, he obviously survived and took on better things in comparison to them, but I'm kind of mixed where I really want to like qualify him in anything really higher, but you can't just give him this the simple prone to be one up this in comparison. Plus, I feel like we need to go and get out the threat ratings here. So as you see it, because I can obviously like tell you who these people are, is in obvious by like the names and shit. Sorry for like the camera representation. But simply put, Mr. Incredible has the highest threat range with 9.1. Gamma Jack is second with 7.9. Stormicide 6.7. Downburst 6.5. Avoji 6.5. Elastigirl 6.2. Macro Burst 5.9. Blaze 5.5. Village 4.7. Everseer 3.2, Universal Man 2.9, even though he has possibly the most wow form of possible powers ever be had. Again, arguable fraud, man. Then Cycle obviously 1.6, and the others don't have actual confirmed threat rating. But I would say that this is very, again, much consistent, right? Village, when he is old, I would say reasonably is the first person to be reasonably counted as a low hero slash villain. The dude died by the first model and most likely got counteracted with that model in play, at least from what I remember. Cause hold up again. So the first one, right? Presumably, you have macro burst. The second one counteracting him, and this makes argument that the people who actually destroy these different ones are the people that actually hold weight in the actual argument of being over and doing something. So because Village was, the second person to fight the second model doesn't really mean anything. And mostly got Uno reverse card and got a high pitch scream to whatever he could give. But I would just say that that's very much reasonable. I mean, he had a one track case of power and didn't have that much more really to it. Then there's a count of Plasma Bolt, even in the case of Mix, her, old age or whatever, defeating, right? The case of a higher form person in comparison, and she obviously has plasma capability. She's like the wasp of the verse, all this mix of other stuff, but she at the same time is not very much concrete and scalable. So you can very much say that, she's on the same level of, hey man, I don't really know, but if I had to make like a mixed gauge guess, because again, chronologically, she would outlive, the rest of these people and eventually die. You could put her up in these higher margins, but I would say that she gets to be here too. Same thing goes for Glory Days, right? But yeah, then here we have Old Overseer, for sure, with this being said. And Overseer died, obviously, by the mix of the, first one, and doesn't really have anything more greater for him, and a lot of his capabilities were not any help for him fighting the case of the first Omni Droid, so no. Then this is Old Macro Burst that obviously defeated the first one, got killed by the second one, so I would say just their powers, high density, shape shifting of the body to different, projection, probably say reasonably should stand there. I feel like that's very much, reasonable for how they could do stuff. The Shredder Girl usually died by the case of her cape getting sucked into a plane jet, but it has a mixed argument from all the different powers and capabilities to be something of higher regard. But again, no true scaling, so put her there. That even goes for, Glory Days. Order or not, just doesn't really have that much. Then you have Thunderhead, and just from his powers and mixed claim what he could do, you say Thunderhead was like this level, but again, we really don't know. That goes for Prime and, being old. Then you have Dynaguy. And it's the same thing, like Dynaguy's makes a legendness to possibly fight an Omnidroid and die, but by all reasonable realistic, see Dynaguy does not have any true scaling, so Old or Not, same thing. Then these people, like you have Blisterman, No Scaling, Vectress, don't even know who that is. A fan art possibility for, who these people look like, and I'm very much curious about these people, but there's really nothing there. Stormicide, in the case of her old age mixed with other shit, sorry for the yawn, doesn't really have anything to good to say. And for, talk of when she died, right? So the before it killed or Sleepless Man, Trade Win, Vectress. Does it make sense? Hold up. You see, killed. That has to be a typo. You see that? It says Vectress and Gazer Beam, but Gazer Beam destroyed it, so they didn't even fucking kill it. V5 obviously killed Gazer Beam, so that doesn't make any sense. But with Stormicide, from the mix of all this shit, that's not even something that counted. But she obviously would die too. I would take it by obviously a higher form person. She wouldn't reasonably stand any different to them. So, out of prime or not, same thing. Simple as that. Next, you have Apogee, whom powers were useless without the sun. And I would say, in prime or not, she reasonably would just be an unknown. A lot of people unknown. Obviously, the Incredibles verse, even though it has a lot of interesting creative lore, does not have a lot of greater deep delve into Powerscaling. At least not yet. Obviously, we're not even done with the Powerscaling trailers yet. But then you have the case of obviously missing take of Splashdown in the case of his prime, that makes old age. So yeah, Blaze Stone, say very much say because of the fact of when she was killed with the second one there. So I would say Pin Knight perceives she could actually destroy the first one. I think I'll give her the mixed bag argument, with the 50-50 if the Sonic Screaming Village could instantly, flatline her, or she could disintegrate this dude before he could do anything. That, she could easily be like right here. That's in her old age, in her prime. See that she still reasonably should be there. You could even maybe try to argue her being there. I think that's a lot more consistent. But then the first Omni Droid, alright, say reasonably you could just have at the top for right now. Alright, let's talk about Jet Jacket. This is the V10, right? Which will be the first being that easily I'm going to put in D1 Killer for now. I don't think I need to explain that a lot more. The strongest one has every possible counter, durable as hell, a living killing machine, adapts, reforms his entire case of not only, tactical mind to the highest regard. It does the most killer things. The Omni Droid is beyond anybody's comprehension. It is just a dominator. It can one shot almost any being here on a general sense. And as a big ass bot, it is so much of a colossal, unrelenting, unparalleled figure that just terminates anybody down. Got lasers. Again, adapts. Can, you know, prick out different levels of the most, I feel like, whoppy do versatility. But if anything, could just walk a lot of these people down. And almost every Omni Droid that was shown before in the movie and accounted for, obviously, it is all of that times literally probably 9. It was like ridiculous close, you know what I'm saying, for any person that comes this way. It literally will skewer these people, annihilate these people, disintegrate these people, bowling ball these people. Omnidroid is not one of the most terrifying fucking robots I've seen in fiction, but it's one of the most terrifying things in any scenario because it literally is always having a whole different mental focus. It is precise and suffice to say, again, one of the most terrifying things to ever possibly seen. Voidless, emotionless, driven to kill hard a demon time things. And the V10 was so much of a destructive force that it was literally built with the focus to entirely cruise through a city and destroy it, obviously over time. But it literally, again, is a walking pretty much nuke to different crossroads of different people. So, yeah, V10 is nothing to even mess with. Then the V9 is one fucking up Mr. Incredible, which I would think just put, solidly within this tier, right? It's very much, consistent and solid to say. Then the V8 is When I was trying to go about Kill Mr. Incredible, say the same thing, right? It's time. Then the V7, say this, we put like the lower end because it reasonably would just be above all these people. And V7 is kind of like possibly killing like Meta Man or someone else, but these Omni droids, it shouldn't even be like a question. There's a lot more higher. Then the V6 took out obviously Gamma Jack. Could just put him above Gamma Jack, but I think, there would be right there. Then the V5, right, be over here, right? Over all the rest of these people, Gamma Jack was able to defeat it. Then the V4, go about putting case of against laser beam loss. V3 loss against hypershock. V2 loss against this boy, and so on and so forth. Then Syndrome, very built different mind, technically built different. One of not the greatest Pixar villain, but as an actual like person, even with all his radically weird, very crazy, devilish, ingenious tech, and is a man that could stand very much crazy in a lot of different prep time scenarios just by himself, base equipment, even with like his Miss Gravity or neutralizer shit. I would really say, I'll be honest, I don't think he's that strong. Obviously, again, the whole tail is going to mix bag change, yes. But I think it's very much an argument that Syndrome is not objectively that built different. A lot of what he's done is by the byproduct of big, robots doing his work by doing a bunch of different prep time, planning, strategic different works in the past, you know what I'm saying, to not only configure the greatest possible unstoppable force to pretty much body and flatline and destroy superheroes off the senses, but a bunch of different play of his different shit is really hiding behind tech. And if he ever actually got hit, if the man got knocked out from a low end collide with a building wall, I don't really see him surviving greater fights. And again, no greater prep time with having, again, these fucking Pacific Rim ass bots doing his work. He's most likely gonna get bought again. He's there for right now, but that's pretty objective to me. Scritch. Is it a greater name? Would be Scritch. I don't really know that much about this person. I've only seen the Incredibles 2. Wanted to do a little bit of research about different scaling that's taken from them, but I don't have much greater from them. You know what I'm saying? Different, more, I guess, noticeable, now mixed high tiers within that movie to really say a lot more distinctly, and I barely even remember Screech. But like for Reflux, decent, no, some shit, but it's not too like distinctly anything more. It's just a big ass fucking, blister of fire, a living like cannon of it. And I don't see how that's getting past Blaze Stone. Anyone is a lot more durable, has counters, better powers. Just no, right? Want to be cruiser, right? I would say because of electricity and different mix of possible hacks from that, that they can very much, get out of the range of these people and do some decent cool shit. I don't think this guy's getting for the case of the first Omni Droid, to be fair though. So I would probably say right there, and that goes for everyone else, right? Brick makes bad. Maybe the benefit of doubt is kind of one off there, but nah, don't think so. Not the same thing. This is the person in Cruiser. Now you have Glory Days Gamma Jack. This is where I think makes argue. If you think he really better than Meta Man. Meta Man just has powers and greater arsenal of inventory. But Gamma Jack has the actual claim of really being a pillar of power, the Homelander of the verse, a fan favorite even though he has zero screen time, inside with the fact of him having literally the capability to produce radioactive gamma radiation akin to the bombastic, devastation and mayhem a nuke could obviously, produce, but as well compound with the fact that this dude could literally go to new layers of eroding an entire area and a whole different level of not only disaster but just with power, talking about manipulation and gamma radiation in the glory days would probably be a lot more of a heavy artillery person, with pretty much just by either blessing someone with possibly a cancer ray or dropping whole bombastic blisters or shit. And even though it's just that he could just manipulate, you know what I'm saying? Game radiation and produce small different faults of it. And obviously his limit is 100 meteor radius, which is pretty decently far from like a combatant perspective. But an all around record, he really just had that. Like I know there's edits of him flying like an invincible variant or doing anything like that, but that's just all theory. And then that's really concretely confirmed. The dude really was just in his suit doing whatever, just walking around, mixed bag. And he definitely was very powerful, but I'd probably like say that he's reasonably here. I don't really see an argument how he could beat the V6. Like I know again, the V6 most likely took out an old Gamma Jack, but the same fate would most likely happen to him. I think the only argument you could have is again, if you think he was really that radioactively built different, he was that much of a beaming hot, radiation dissolver. The man had the most crazy, wicked array of power just off of the credit of that. That would end all, dispose of the case of, everybody below him. But I think more confidently he should be here because to me, that really qualifies being elite heroes, aka being on the same stand of these Omni droids, is people that if they actually got into a confrontation with these, they could actually do something of a greater stand. And I even know, again, I respect Gamma Jack in the idea of saying that because of him being in his prime, he was a built hierarchy dude. And he was standing shoulder to shoulder with Mr. Incredible, Gazer Beam, Frozone, all these other people. He is a high renowned dude. I just don't really see that really pushing him past, especially because the only big thing about them being old is obviously, yeah, they are aged up. They obviously, you know what I'm saying, have not been in action for 10, 20 years. And again, it's just the kind of thing that you have to really accept is that Incredibles, even with all its vast run of lore, it doesn't really have the most conclusive database to really define niggas as something. He don't really got true concrete record of scaling. That's the big thing. So yeah. Anyway, Glory Days Gazer Beam. I would say easily, you know what I'm saying, just stand above where he was his younger self, and the same shit should imply. I'm gonna be honest, like the again, great reasoning for this main game is he already defeat these motherfuckers, and it's just a one-up form. I don't really see how Gazer Beam, even with being obviously younger, older, a lot more swift, sufficient, and can really try to greater, I guess, use all the most optionable, hard piercing ray from the case of his obviously heat vision. I don't really see how it could really better sufficiently help him to really entirely dominate in the fight, especially with all the accounting of what the V5 Omni Droid was. It was resilient, could take almost any aspect of beam from him. He did not know the greater, insides, weaknesses, and outs of him, and it really could not really pull greater difference, I feel like, against him. So, yeah, I don't really see any way he would really push back. I think we give him a better fight, but yeah, even with him trying to use a greater, I feel like conclusive, concussive ray or any other powerful, possible way of being a literal fucking fire beam, as he literally was the Cyclops of this verse. I don't really see how much difference it really make it. So yeah. Then we have Glory Days Hypershock. Oh, okay. Last girls got poked up there. Did not mean to go and do that. But Hypershock said would just stand because Prime decent better over. Same thing against the V4. All resiliences, all capitalized on that mindset to be in that staple of being just too of a busky big can of doom for this man Hypershock to stand against. So no, doesn't matter. Not gonna change anything there. Alright. But because we have Elastigirl here, it is Incredibles 1. This is her coming back into action. Obviously, she's older, makes that a prime. But, something I would say because of her powers and how she said on the danger scale and being like top 3 to be worried about, I would say she has every reason within speed, her agility, stretching powers, can pull, a lot of different mix of Mr. Fantastic and Luffy shit. I'm gonna say that she could be right here. I'm gonna give her that. I think that's a very much reasonable thing to put her at least for now. I think that's a strong scale point. Then Glory Days macro burst. Let's see, I'm gonna put burst there, right? Glory Days Meta Man. So right here. Now this is where the argument really is for who would beat who. Now in powers, I would give it to Meta Man. An actual different, deception, reputation, statements, and more creative alibis, and the fact that I think, even it's kind of 50-50 split, if Meta Man could get around the, ray end of radiation, gamma radiation being manipulated to then soak this dude in multi-array, the most acidic, dummy whammy, whoppy do mayhem that possibly be made, and for Gamma Jack to kind of acidically just corrode this guy, something he can't even comprehend until it's too late, or in Meta Man being more maybe professionally faster with his greater take of different powers and being a lot more of a heavy hitter. I mean, this guy was a solidification of a powerhouse. I mean, his powers is crack, which is where I'm actually going to try to go and let this finish while I say what I have to say. But like, the dude was cracked, so you could very much argue with this ad now finish and going to, of course, compound to them. Well, you two don't want me to go and watch this nigga video. That's insane. Anyway, bro, like, he was a built different dude. I mean, his powers, just from a recollection, as I don't remember all of them, he had obviously flight, super strength. He had 3 bars filled with power type, endurance. He had strength obviously boosted all the way. He was low in intelligence, had good vulnerability, had a sonic scream, I think heat vision, vulnerability, teleportation. He had all these whoppy do things. I mean, there's a lot more I could go into, but I think easily Glory Days Meta Man could be Glory Days Gamma Jack, bro. I just feel like that's a very much set in stone thing. There's no way to argue against that. It's one thing if it's old Meta Man and a mixed scenario and topic matter of that, but I think easily Glory Days Meta Man is just way beyond the case of someone like Gamma Jack in his Glory Days, I'm gonna be honest. Then we have Downburst, where I would say, same thing applies here, what is being said. Universal Man, give him the same talk, right? His prime, right his Overseer, no knowledge, don't matter. Then we have the case of obviously Phalange in his glory days, and I would say same stuff applies, right? Put him in the same bar, not too much big distinctful difference, right? Then Frozone, current and all that, I would say gives danger. Not trying to go against being, but Frozone being, not only the most coldest motherfucker in the building, pun intended, voiced by the GOAT, Samuel Jackson, is built different, crazy, with not only the means of being a very hacksy, weird, wild person, can make the most craziest amount of shit, cool edits and everything, stylize on niggas, is one build different, chronovisor to ice making individual, can bliss about not only the most craziest shit, can create ice out of almost anything in any place, and is one of the most crazy, dangerous vatos within the Incredibles verse. Sorry for that, Piers 9. But, Rose, I feel like even with all the capabilities that he has, with his ridiculous versatility, kind of sounds almost weird. What the fuck? I don't know what the fuck I just said. It sounded almost like fast A speaking thing. Again, nigga not like talking dumb or anything with this being said, but I'm just saying it's like, even with his most crazy fertility, right? A dude dabbles in a mix of being, even though he create a lot of most craziest, absurd run around of shit, without a greater vast rut of like water and situational stuff, he kinda is very much more limited in comparison to a lot more higher top tiers. I'll say this because of his greater danger shit and the way the other cases of the Omni droids were built in place for him. I would say with a lot of the situational stance possibly on the island itself and the situations, I actually do think strong that Frozone could best these people because a lot of the hyper situation they could stand, and mainly off of like the Richter scale in comparison to someone like Hypershock, who obviously can produce mountain level shit, and the amount of different cases blocks and capabilities that Frozone can produce, and even wondering same time about how he can produce ice and different winterly bliss temperatures more colder than anything in like Antarctica. I would actually give him the argument that you could actually see him being able to beat these Omni droids at least. Like the V8, that was used to go and face him, so I don't actually believe that he's beating them. You know what I'm saying? Right? Easily, but at the same time, I believe that he could, within the right situationalness and the context being in the credit of, the island in mind, and standing 10 toes against these Omni droids, possibly besting the V6 and the V7. And unlike in comparison, the V8, they don't have resilientness to his hacks. It's kind of a more stylistic means to win. Plus, I can see a lot of what Frozone has been able to push past the powers of these people. So, I know it might seem crazy, but I believe in my man Frozone to get the job. No bias. And that's just using current. I think Frozone in his prime is about the same, but could probably give a lot more of a better challenge. But I'm going to still give him, you know what I'm saying, the reasonable, consistent benefit of the doubt. Next, we have Incredibles 2 Violet. I would say for what she is in the power showcasing that she showed and what she could do, I think she on her spot reasonably in pro hero, but I don't know how great or super hardcore she is. She's kind of a mixed form of a glass cannon where she has ridiculous durability in the sense of her different, force fields, can turn invisible, is very crazy with movement, different capabilities, and can't hold her own when she wants to, but she ain't like Susan Storm to a greater degree. So I would say about here is reasonable, and that goes for obviously, mid back her and Incredibles 1, even though Incredibles 2 showcases her being on a way better regard, but I feel like they're about in the same regard. Dash, durability wise, even though he can reduce from obviously his speed and who he's able to bump into and collide with and do different things a lot more, and because he's a speedster, be obviously untouchable for a lot. I think it's a very situational mix, but I don't really think he could really do anything to this Omni Droid unless given mixed scenario bias. But I think he earns his spot being right there, to at least some mixed regards. I understand that Incredibles 1, obviously, he has a mix more childish behavior, but at the end, like post the movie, curse into Incredibles 2, there's a lot more like seasoned, mature, decently capable, ready to do what he gotta do and really hit the jets and speed blitz. And, there's a very capable boy and has reacted to way more greater shit than even a lot of the case of the people, not only, below, but mixed sometimes above. It's just more actually doing something. I do think eventually, like, he is gonna get caught lacking. So yeah, that's where I would say put him. But Kibbles 2 Last Girl, I think by that point you could say that she could get around these people. I do think she could possibly get around Gears of Beam. It's just more like it very much is a hard 50-50. I think she's way more faster and capable than this dude. But like Incredibles 1, I think she'd be full ready for the greater velocity and argument for, hyper beam stuff that Gears of Beam has argument to do. And as well the fact that how to go and defeat the, fourth model with all its resiliences, upgrading from the case of the V3, different tactical maneuvers would be, I feel like, too much all around hyperly for the case of, not only her first version, but be a little bit out of her range. But let's just say she got a solid hit on Gears Beam, she could either knock him out or trample this dude, right? She could club this man next week. But I think, yeah, most time old Gears of Beam probably. I bet a lot more money on Gears of Beam of obviously the Glory Days. Then we have Glory Days Elastigirl, which is where I do think she does get the sufficient 1v5, just too much, too much. I think that's, solid to say. Then it's Incredible of Incredibles 2, cut, full season, ready to brawl, ready to buck. I think is reasonable to say, especially because of vulnerability and his threat scale, which is obviously accounting for the Glory Days, and just how the dude, multiple narrative placements and comparisons, supposed to be better than current Frozone and all that, and the situations, and even like Glory Days. I think Obviously, there's a lot of context from defeating, V8, but I think it's reasonable to say that he's at this level, at least there. I think the V9 is just too much, right? But there, Splashdown. Obviously, no crew. Like actual greater showcases of him. He has some interesting lore and possible powers, but man allegedly either died by Omni Droid or nigga died from literally suffocation, this cape getting dragged into a fucking tornado or some possible fucking tidal wave. Trying to go ahead and find the lost city of Atlantis and instead died by the water that he was trying to always fucking explore. It's kind of funny how like goofy different matter of not only personalities and goals these people had, but it's also just saddened that Syndrome bitch has really killed these people callously over being bitter and jealous over this man, you know what I'm saying? Mr. Incredible reasonably telling them off for trying to be a sidekick with no actual intention of understanding the greater shit going on. And Syndrome to me was always just a very power hungry, privileged, childish brat of a person to where he would go down this route. Granted, Mr. Incredible maybe could have ushered a greater mind for him, but I feel like there's a level of like Syndrome always was inherently a selfish person, regardless of how young he was. But that's besides the point. Mr. Incredible, in the case of obviously, in shape form, aka with obviously a credit of being just Mr. Incredible of the first film, I would say wouldn't be so much more different. This you want to argue like in shape more better, not kind of like post down bad depression type thing. Could be better, but I don't really see that much of a difference, right? Or this supposed to be like his adrenaline version. They can give V9 a lot more better fight, but I don't think he's beaten. So depending on what you proceed to say, I would just say he's like more sharp and better. Yeah, I'll decently give him, the up one there. Out of shape though, just being how he is, not getting his back cracked in the mix, I would say he reasonably would just get killed off a lot more sooner in comparison with the V8 and maybe mixed argumentation. He would go a lot more lower. But I'm gonna be honest, a lot of his mixed demonstrations really doing something is a little bit of like a kind of like one-off whatever ting. So he could be an unknown slash question mark or no scaling, but I think that again is a solid conclusion. Now, Glory Days, Mr. Incredible is easily the strongest soup to ever live. Look at these ratings, highest one. He's easily top dog for the entire thing, undeniable GOAT. But the true GOAT will always be our adorable walking time bomb, universe destroyer, amalgamation of all OP, the incredible Franklin Richards, adorable Jack Jack. That's the tier list, simple as that. Yeah, but on a serious note, Jack Jack definitely has potential to be the GOAT when he grows up. But I even with like Glory Days, I don't see like, especially because within the context, not even knowing that shit, he would be the V 10, especially because a lot of context was involved in defeating the V10. So just no, but he should be like the strongest, I think, undebatably, out of anyone else, right? So yeah, simple as that. I'll go ahead and make a new title just for this GOAT. Simple as that. Yeah, but I hope you guys have enjoyed. Love y'all. I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace out, mommy. Love y'all.